right, welcome to Two Guys on a Porch. I'm Jason. This is Bradford. Of course, we have my hunting dog, Kimber, here with us today. And this is a momentous occasion. This is our first field trip. We are at Mission Cigar and Social in Spring Hill, Tennessee. And wow, what a great place. What a momentous time to do a field trip. Why are we here? Is because besides drinking good bourbons and smoking cigars, we like to get together with buddies. The purpose of this is to kind of share life experiences together while we enjoy a good bourbon. And Mission Cigar has that same purpose. So that's why we're here today. And it's great to be here. What are we smoking and drinking today, Bradford?
Thanks, Jason. It is great to be here. We thank Monty Collins and the ownership team here at the Mission Cigar and Social, and hope to have a chance to talk to them a little bit afterwards. But we have started utilizing this shop to procure our cigars, including what we're smoking today, which is a very special release of the Fuente y Padrón Legend. Only 500 shops around the country receive these cigars. There are 40 in each box, and Fuente made cigars in honor of Padrón, and Padrón in honor of Fuente. Both the patriarchs of those companies died in 2016 and 2017, and the now patriarchs got together in 2020 and thought that it would be a really cool idea to honor each other's family and companies by doing this. And so we are now enjoying the product of that. It was just released last year, less than a year ago, that these cigars were made available to the public, and obviously not very public if only 500 shops received it.
And I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm guessing not very cheap either.
These are $200 a stick.
Holy cow. Woo! We're literally burning money here.
Yeah, when I cut the end off, it was probably about 20 bucks down the drain.
Lordy, I hope Emily and Catherine aren't watching this episode. We might get in trouble for $200 cigars.
And speaking of that, I mean, there are so many of our friends here from past lives, because I look and think there are a lot of folks I used to go to church with, and then there are people I go to church with now. And I think it, speaks well to church hopping.
Yeah. So somebody needs to pray for you. That's for damn sure.
So I also note that I've got friends here.
Yeah.
There's no family of mine here. And I thought you were going to be in the same boat, but I see a soon-to-be Dr. Hubbard in the back row.
Yes, my oldest daughter, Janie, shout out to you. She came out to visit me here and watch me. So, yeah, proud of her.
So my stepdaughter, who is a cigar smoker, chose to go to the monster truck rally today instead of being here. I'm not making that up. Now, she did go to Alabama, so she comes by it honestly.
Yeah. Well, that's a pretty good poll. And if we're noting absentees, Chris Nishan's not here today because Chris is duck hunting up in Real Foot. Of course, with that cold front coming through, I don't say as I blame him. I think, truth be told, Kimber would rather be with Chris right now than with me. So.
Well, and what's interesting about Chris not being here is I texted you yesterday about, I think, the whole group of guys that went with you to pick out the Jack Daniel's barrel that you selected. And I think all of us would say we picked the one you picked.
Do we have to hash this again? Y'all were no help. So back up. So some people might not remember. Chris Nishan was in our wild turkey episode. He's a hunting, fishing guy, great turkey caller, and that's why we had him for the wild turkey episode. Great buddy, great hunting guy. So now going to the single barrel. We did the single barrel, went down to Jack Daniel's. You can pick up your own barrel, and they do this testing. Y'all were no help at all. Y'all. I was like, what do you think? I don't know. But fortunately, we picked out a very good barrel, so it turned out well.
Well, and you think, that was 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Almost 9 now, since we're in 2025. And those guys are still part of our lives, your lives. I think that's a really cool testament to you in this case, for sure.
Well, to this whole podcast, I mean, let's not forget why we did this. The ictus of this was not just you and I, hey, let's do something different. No, these guys out here are the ones that we smoked cigars, drank bourbon, played poker with. We've been doing this podcast for years in that sense, 20 plus years. Just the only difference now is they're putting a camera and a microphone in our face, and we have to be careful what we say.
So when we lit these before the episode began, because I think we want to make sure we enjoy them.
Yeah.
And my question to you was, what did you think? And you said, is this a $200 cigar?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can't take it with you. So by all means, if you can do it, by all means, get yourself a $200 cigar and smoke it. But man, I don't know. I love Padrones, as you well know. I like Fuentes. I don't know if the price difference is worth it. I don't know if I'm tasting the extra, $170 there.
Now, you remember we did the, I think it was, I can't remember, it was a $50 cigar we did that we also procured here. It was a 50th anniversary. And I said on that episode, that was the best cigar I ever had. Yeah. It still is the best cigar I ever had. Yeah. As good as this is.
But it's I don't know, it's kind of a notch in the belt, if you will, to say you smoked one of these. That's 100%. That's pretty cool. It's cool that you can come down here and experience that and get a stick like this. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Here at Mission Cigar and Social, that's impressive.
Yeah, and it's hard to think with what we're drinking today, that being Weller, that the cigar would overshadow what we're drinking, because usually the whiskey is the star of the show.
Yep.
I think it still is going to be, in part because we enjoy Weller so much.
Yeah, Weller, I mean, Weller has really started the wheated bourbon. Most people enjoy a wheated bourbon as opposed to a rye bourbon, as opposed to, a Scotch whiskey made of barley. So this is home base for us. W.L. Weller started all with wheated bourbon back in the day, and what we're tasting today is his legacy. And then, of course, from that sprang all, Julian Pappy, nicknamed Pappy, Julian Van Winkle, as known as Pappy, was a salesman, and then later bought the company with a buddy, and then it just goes on from there.
Yeah, to add a little context to that, William LaRue Weller did start the wheated bourbon distillation process, which was non-existent, and he was using a food source. So at the time, wheat was a luxury product, and he started using that. And Julian Van Winkle in 1893, at 18 years old, went to work for him as a salesman.
Yeah, I don't think that would go down now today. As an 18-year-old, I'll get my son out there and start selling bourbon. Let's see how that works.
Right.
Yeah, that's not going to go down well.
And so he, to your point, was able to perfect that, and in 1909, 1910, bought the company. And through various iterations, the company became Stitzel Weller, sold in 1972. But that bottle, if you've watched our Pappy New Year, that bottle that you got of the very old, very, very old Fitzgerald, was the distillation of that was overseen by Pappy himself.
Yep.
Because it was barreled in 57.
Yep.
He died in 65. His son,
Junior,
was the one who eventually sold the company, but that was bottled in 69, and that label was sold with it. It's now a Heaven Hill product. It's still a wheated bourbon, but man, I can't wait to taste that.
That's one thing I think we'll end up talking later on today here in our first field trip episode is what do we look forward to tasting in this new year, and that bottle right there is my most look forward to bottle to taste. We've also had some newer iterations of Old Fitzgerald. We'll compare those two, but that very there's two berries in there. Very, very old Fitzgerald. That's kind of the last of the original Julian Pappy stuff. That was one of his last things for him to distill.
Yeah, and so we've talked a lot about what we're smoking, what we're drinking.
Yep.
The topic of really what we want to talk about today is Mission. So it's appropriate we are at the Mission Cigar and Social, because the whole point is really around calling, purpose, mission, hobbies, vocation. Can those things converge? Do they have to converge? You've talked a lot about you being a neurosurgeon and feeling called to that.
Yeah.
So before we jump into it, we do want to taste. And I think we each have glasses beside us. We're going to do 4 expressions of the 6 available to us. We're not going to do the special reserve, which is kind of the starter Weller.
Yep.
And if you can find it, it's, I don't know, $55, $60. Not terribly expensive.
And it's not terrible either. It's very good stuff.
Very good. It's also not amazing. You know, as good as we are at blind taste tests, we've proven that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we would be able to distinguish it from another good bourbon.
Yeah.
But we're going to do the 12-year, the Antique 107. We're going to do the full proof and then the CYPB.
Yeah. CYPB is craft your own bourbon. That is really an incredible product right there. That's some really good stuff. I would put that up there with a 20 or 23-year-old Pappy.
I would agree. Yeah.
It's phenomenal stuff. It doesn't cost nearly as much. It's not any easier to find necessarily, but it will save you a few $1,000s.
Yeah, and so if you remember, the Weller and Pappy are both made by Buffalo Trace. The mash bills are the same. What we're going to taste today, the 12-year would kind of match the Pappy 12-year Lot B. The Antique 107 would match the 15-year Pappy. It's the same proof. And then the other two, the full proof and the CYPB, are different animals entirely.
Yeah.
So
this first one is the 12-year we're testing?
It is.
All right.
I had to look to see if the bottle is matching. So, yeah, this is the 12-year.
So this is really good stuff. So this is essentially the same. I mean, same mash bill as you just said. At some point, they go and taste their barrels, and what they really like, they put onto the Van Winkle B12. The stuff that gets quote unquote rejected becomes this nice stuff right here. I don't know.
So this is reject whiskey.
Reject whiskey. Call me. I mean, if this is the reject pile,
I'll take it all day.
Yeah, color me reject. But this is great stuff. This is what you want in a bourbon. It's got a great nose to it. It's caramel all over. It's sweet. It's smooth. Yeah, it's great. And so this is what proof is this?
I don't know.
Here, look at the bottle. I'm not trying to test you.
90
So,
on the button.
There you go. So this is kind of that standard percentage, 45% alcohol. It's not like your Willet that's high proof, but this is good sipping whiskey right here.
Well, you know, and as we've said, we really enjoy smoking cigars and drinking whiskey together.
Yep.
That doesn't make us experts.
No.
I think people who've watched us would agree with that.
Yeah, we've confirmed that by own confession and in our videos. If we told you that, and then we proved it with our taste testing skills or lack thereof.
But at least in some of the episodes, you note flavor profiles and tasting notes like vanilla and cinnamon and caramel. And I'm like, this is good. This is not good. We haven't had any bad whiskey, so that hasn't come up. So I have good taste, but I can't taste anything. So that's kind of what it boils down to. So, but let me talk a little bit about the science behind it. Not that I know anything scientific, but they char new oak barrels. There are 4 levels of charring. Most manufacturers use a level 3. And what that does is it changes the chemical composition of the wood. It draws out the wood sugars. And when you take sugar and heat it up, you can make things like caramel and toffee. The other thing that's released in wood that's natural to most plants is lignin, which is one of the factors that gives vanilla its flavor. Vanilla obviously comes from vanilla beans, but it can be produced if you manufacture enough lignin to do so. And so when we talk about, oh, that has hints of vanilla, caramel, toffee, it's because it's in the wood.
Exactly. And you wouldn't think the container, if you will, would put that much flavor into the liquid. But considering this goes into the barrel clear and comes out looking like this, that tells you there's a lot of mixture there.
So I've got a theory.
Yeah.
And I'll be curious of your feedback. So I've tasted some, bourbons that, are new to the scene or what have you, whether they're going through MGP or doing their own thing. And I'm like, it's not good. I can't tell you why, but it's like, I've used the word, it tastes gimmicky. It's like they're trying for something. And I wonder, it's like, okay, let's do a level 4 char to bring all of that out. And then we're only going to age it for 2 years and put it in a bottle. And so it doesn't develop character. It may have some flavors, but it doesn't blend as well to hit kind of the balance, if you will. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. And, to that same extent, they got the idea of, hey, if we start shaking the barrel somehow, let's put it, like the Ingrams, they put their barrels
on the
barges.
Yeah.
Jefferson puts it on the ocean and it moves it. So the idea is, hey, if you shake the barrels a little bit, it'll mix a little bit better. Old school is you put it in a hot rick house, aka a barn, and the top barrels get a little more heated than the bottom barrels, and so they just kind of move those barrels in different positions in the rick house, and that's the temperature is what makes it go in and out. That's the old school way of doing it. But I think it ultimately comes down there, gimmick or not, it comes down to your distiller, the person tasting those barrels. That's truly a vocation. We're talking about vocations here today, and you're calling. That would be a neat job calling that, hey, my job is to go around and taste barrels of bourbon all day long. That's not a bad gig right there.
But I think for me, this is a hobby. Smoking cigars, drinking whiskey, it's a hobby. I'm not passionate about it. I don't have to do it. I don't chase it. I mean, particularly if you're dealing with alcohol, you very quickly go into the possibility of addiction.
Sure.
I don't think there's any coincidence that after Prohibition, AA was founded.
Yeah.
and needfully so. So I think if you become too passionate about it, it becomes obsessive and then perhaps addictive, and that's not healthy.
Too much of anything that's even good, too much of that becomes bad. That's just kind of a principle in life.
Yeah, so where does that line change between hobby and passion? And I don't know the answer. I'm just throwing it out there.
Well, yeah, I think that answer is different for anybody. And I don't know there is a definitive answer, but I think if you can hit all the targets with one arrow, that's pretty cool. If you can have a job, a paycheck that you love, that you're calling and you're passionate about, wow, it doesn't get much better than that. But it's also good to have balance. Okay, everybody's got to make a living somehow. You got to get a paycheck. The same token, it's nice to have a little something on the side for fun. If you, I don't know this, but I imagine if you talk to a distiller in their off time, they get tired of tasting bourbon all the time. They probably want a glass of wine or something. I don't know. My guess.
I think about calling, and I had a conversation with my son, who's 25 years old in a week. He has a family now, and most unconventional way to live life, but it's worked for him. He got married, didn't have a job. They bought a house, didn't have a job, had a baby. didn't have a job.
Sounds like an American to me.
I mean, but it's worked for him. And so my question was, and he's a little bit restless in general. He, in college, was like, I'm not going to work corporate. I'm not doing an office job. And he hasn't. He's now found something to do. And I said, you know, walk me through that process. You know, I'm calling you and giving you advice. And I think that, you know, for a future episode, we can talk about responsibilities, what we're called to as men. That's a different thing. Or parenting adult children, that's a whole different discussion. It changes from coach to advisor. But my question to him around that calling was, he quoted a verse from Isaiah. The piece that hit me was, wait on the Lord. And I said, yeah, that wait is not a sit on your ass kind of a wait. And he said, no, the image that he has is like a sprinter at the starting line. You know, you're focused, you're in your stance, you're prepared before you do the thing that you're called to do.
Yeah, rise upon wings of eagles, if I remember correctly. Isaiah 64, I think, but
we'll go with that.
Yeah, well, just say it confidently, and you can't be wrong, right? That's sometimes right, sometimes wrong, never in doubt.
But I think too about my father. He spent, 34 years working for a company, and he always felt a call to the mission field. He even applied to do that at one point. When I think I was in high school, and I'm like, oh, I hope he doesn't do that because I'm not leaving. I don't want to move. And they turned him down, and
he got rejected by a missionary?
Yeah, he did.
Okay.
But he and my mom, when he was 65 years old, did have an opportunity to do that full time, and they moved to the Ukraine for a year.
Oh, wow.
Right after the Soviet Union fell. And I think that was the call on his life, and the prior part of that life was in preparation. He had not proved any competency in that, but I think he was being prepared for that. So I think for young people, if you're wondering, man, I don't feel like I'm doing what I'm called to do, take what you're doing as preparation and trust and surrender to what the future may hold.
I agree. I think we're kind of saying everything around it, but not saying it directly, so I'll say it directly. One big problem that we all face in life is, who are we? What's our identification?
Yeah.
What's our purpose in life? I'm here. There's got to be something bigger than just this. What's the purpose of life? And that goes into your calling. What has God called you to do? I was kind of weird in the way that I wanted to be. It was God put on my heart to be a neurosurgeon back in high school, really maybe even junior high. And so I'm odd in that way. But most people struggle with trying to figure out what that is. And that's a process by which you just alluded to. You search, you pray, pray for doors to open and close. And it's just, there's no set answer to that, but it's trying to find that calling. What's your identification in life? Who am I, and what is my purpose in life?
Yeah, I have another thought on that I want to pick up, but let's taste I was going to say the 15 year, but it's the Antique 107.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's 15 year, but it would be more than coincidental if it's not the 15 year, because it's the same proof as the Pappy 15. I suspect it's the same profile. It would be the reject from those.
Yeah.
I had this New Year's Day. I love this whiskey.
So this basically, the 12 year, it's sitting in the barrels. It doesn't get picked to go down the Van Winkle line. It stays in the Weller family, if you will, and they continue to age it. It's a higher proof, hence the 107, and it's aged longer. So it's a little bit darker in color, more flavoring from the barrel.
And I think when you talk about character and balance with whiskey, if they are able to achieve that smoothness that we've talked about, and those flavors in a higher proof, and 107, particularly for Weller, is that higher proof, they know what they're doing. Willett, we've tasted those high proof, that Coy Hill from Jack Daniels. Yeah, it's not happenstance that they have figured out how to create that flavor profile and character that this certainly does.
So this is definitely a step up. You can, just like when we tasted 15, 20, and 23, you thought the 12 was good, but wow, that, I would have been happy with 12 and drank that all day long. But you're right, this is better. It's in the finish. It has the same nose, that same. I call it fruit forward. I smell a lot of a cherry in it, but the finish, how it just eases down. It's a little more viscous, a little more full bodied, if you will. That's more of a wine term, but it takes something more from the wood. That it's a more body to it. It's a little more viscous, and the finish is just smooth.
My daughter tasted this the other day, and she commented on the mid-palate. It hit her mid-palate in a certain way, and I didn't know I had a mid-palate.
You have you definitely have a mid-gut, but not a mid-palate. Yeah,
and a bigger one after Christmas.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. This is so we're continuing up the line, and this is definitely an improvement on the 12-year-old.
Yeah, I agree. So the thought that I had around calling is, my son, I'll use that example again. He wanted to be an NFL football player.
Don't we all?
And I thought, I'm not going to be the dream killer. And to him, I think it was a natural aspiration because we were friends with an NFL football player.
Yeah.
So to him, that seemed like as normal a profession as anything else. So the fact that he was 5'8", 150 pounds soaking wet, may have sent a message to him at some point, like, guess what? You can't do everything or anything you want. I know that people, well, you can do anything you want. Not really.
No.
You can't.
No, you cannot.
And so if you...
Basketball's out as well, as long as we're keeping score.
So I think that idea, if you attach so much to, I feel like this is what I've been called to do, and it's obvious for whatever reason that, no, you haven't. You can't do that.
But there's something to be learned along that path. So like your son, I played high school football. I was all of 130 pounds soaking wet. And guess what position I played? Guard. I mean, you
weren't guarding anybody.
No. And I just like to hit people. And I peaked in about the 9th grade. I got growth early. And so I was All-American All-City in the 9th grade. I know that's hard to believe, but it's true. I have the certificate back at home to prove it. But yeah, so I peaked out in the 9th grade, so I continued on, but I rode the bench. And there was something about that process of, I am not going to quit. I'm going to do this no matter what, because I enjoy it. And just out of principle, I'm not going to quit. I didn't have any delusions of being a professional football player. I didn't think I was going to be college, but I think going down that arduous path did help me endure neurosurgery training, which is something in of itself that is pretty arduous. That if just like I was being
You told me it wasn't hard.
Neurosurgery is fun. Working 120 hours a week is hard. That's occasionally getting to go home and see your wife and kids. That's the hard part.
So, part of this too is, I'm 58, soon to be 59 years old. If I came to you and said, Jason, I really feel like I'm being called to be a neurosurgeon.
Yep.
So let's say that were even in the realm of possibility, because this goes back to preparation. Are you going to let me do surgery on somebody's brain today?
No, heck no.
No. I'd have to go to school. I'd have to go to years of training. I mean, you were in your 30s before you were designated as the authority for a surgery without somebody having to sign off or supervise or what have you, before you were on your own as a full-fledged neurosurgeon, right?
Right, correct.
Yeah, so I think that preparation and the pursuit of that in whatever you feel called or unsure as to what you're called to, I think is really really a key component of that. Is if people feel like, man, I don't know what I'm called to do, and then they do nothing, they get lost.
Well, you think of David in the Bible, there he was, he was anointed as a child, and they say, you're going to do great things. The next thing you know, Jesse, his dad, says, okay, great, go out in the fields. You're a shepherd. And so, there he was protecting the flock, and he,
it was almost decades later before he
yeah, and so but
calling,
he learned
right.
he learned how to use a slingshot along the way. Killed the lion, killed a bear, and the next thing you know, he's up against Goliath in front of everybody and the entire army of Philistines and Israeli army. And so that's an example off the top of my head of where something that seems fairly meaningless. And let's remember, a shepherd was about the lowest rung job you could have. I mean, I don't know if you've been around sheep. I've been around sheep. They're the nastiest animals. And for
I'm not going to ask the context in which you were around sheep, Jason. I don't think I want to know.
That's a little bit too much information. But the nights get cold, So anyway, moving on. But yeah, so if you find yourself in that low rung job, you're a janitor. Who knows? You may be learning skills there that ultimately go to your calling, that what God has for you in your life. Don't just presume that this is a worthless time for you. God's in control of this, and he has a plan for you.
Yeah, I think, people have talked about, well, I want to be a teacher, but I can't make a living being a teacher, which there's some truth to that. And I think that gifting, that drive, that call, whatever you want to call it, can be used even in a corporate world, because there's an opportunity to mentor, teach, train, to use the things that you feel are innate about you in whatever environment you find yourself. And I think there's that purpose, if you will, of seeking to utilize whatever gifts and skills you have in whatever job you find yourself. So I think that's really important. So we're going to move to taste the last two expressions of Weller we have today. So we've kind of mirrored the Pappy with the first two.
Yep.
So now we're going to move to the full proof. So to answer your question before you ask on what is the proof, we're looking at 114. And so
this comes straight out of the barrel.
Yeah.
It's not chill filtered, if I recall. It's straight out of the barrel. So if you were to allow this to cool down, it may even get a little cloudy because it doesn't go through that same filtering process. It's not single barrel, in the sense the single barrel is literally they take one barrel, put it in the bottle, so you can have different taste within given barrel. This is a mixture of barrels, but it is straight from the barrel.
Yeah, and the difference between the chill filtered process and the non-chill filter process is only that they lower the temperature on a chill filter to remove some of the impurities. It's mostly some of the fatty material that maybe have been in the wood, the cloudy aspect which you describe. It doesn't change the taste at all. A number of distillers would say that in a blind taste test, they wouldn't be able to distinguish between a non-chill filtered versus a chill filtered. But visually, you may be able to see the difference with that cloudy. But we're not going to taste the difference, is what it boils down to. So what are your thoughts here? I've never tried this.
Neither have I.
Welter, but I've never tried this.
Great nose. It's the back end again. It's
in terms of being a good.
How it finishes. It's got a lot more spice, cinnamon kick to it at the end. It's not the smoothness that we just had in the 107, the antique. It starts off the same, but then it tastes different at the end. You can If you mixed up my glasses, catch me on another day, I probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference on a blind taste. But within just right now, I could tell you right now that different. You can taste it on the backside.
I think for me, to your point on the finish, that higher proof sticks with you a little bit.
Yeah.
It's hotter, obviously, because it's a higher alcohol content, and it does stay with you a little bit, whereas that 107 doesn't. All you get is the flavor. I think it's that perfect balance if I'm comparing the two. So I don't care for this to the degree of the other we tasted. Now, what we're about to taste, let's go ahead and grab the CYPB.
Yeah.
The Create Your Perfect Bourbon. And they elicited responses from consumers of their product. So you've got a weeded consumer base to create a profile. And so they blended a number of bourbons together from their Weller barrels to create this. Again, don't know exactly what that would look like, but their mash bill is going to be the same.
Mash bill's the same. The coloration is pretty close. I was just checking out here against the light. I don't know how long this has been aged, but the coloration is the same. CYPB is your distiller going for that unique taste.
Yeah, and we probably have 10-year barrels mixed with 15 and 20-year barrels. So the age, I don't think you can make an age statement other than at least as old as, and they're not telling us that.
Right. They're vague with that. I mean, I don't think they're trying to conceal anything. They just kind of make it up for year to year. They got to pull out another batch, and they said, well, this barrel tastes good now, so we'll pull it. It just happens to be a 10-year, and this one tastes good, and it's a 15-year. So it's a mixture. Again, very good stuff. I think this is close to the 107. It has, of the three that we've tasted now, it's very close to that 107. I've never tasted the 107 and the CYPB back to back, but they are extremely similar.
Yeah, this is 95 proof, and I do think you lose a little bit of character. I've had this, to your point, on its own, never with the 107, and I almost lean toward the 107 because it seems a little more flavorful. This smooths out some of those flavors. You're going to try them both.
Yeah, why not?
I'm keeping the CYPB close because it is so enjoyable. It is, to me, certainly better than the 12-year.
Yeah.
But it's close to that in terms of the way it drinks, how smooth it is. But, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, it's really, really good bourbon.
Absolutely. And as I mentioned earlier, this is a very coveted Weller. It's hard to find, but when you find it, its price point will be significantly less than your 15, 20, and 23 Pappies. But man, it has the spice, it has the nose and the spice of a Pappy all day long. I think you could, a good taste test would be between 23 and CYPB, although I think, as I remember, 23 finished better. But this would be a good 15, 20-year-old Pappy right here.
So the first thing that hits me on that 107, because while you were talking and I wasn't listening.
Nothing different there.
I tasted the two. It's that oak that hits me right off the bat with the 107. It's not true on the CYPB, but that oak then leads into the other flavors, that vanilla, that caramel that we talked about. I almost sound like I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. You just got finished saying you had no mid-palate, or whatever that is.
Right, whatever that is. But I think I prefer, I hate to say this, I think I prefer the 107.
Well, it saved you a lot of money right there.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, and just to note, if you find, Wellers are hard to find. If you find the special release, it is $55, $60 a bottle. The 12-year, I don't know, $70.
Yeah.
The CYPB is more expensive. It's also unattainable. You're going to pay $700, $800 a bottle if you can find it.
Yeah, it's going to be on that top shelf. It's not as hard to find. but it's only because people don't know about it. I would submit that only because the cachet of Pappy that's hard to find. If people were more in the know, they'd probably be getting the CYPB.
I will say this cigar just struck me. I'm about halfway through it, and I think the flavor profile of that changed as well. It's much smoother than it was. I would say it now equates to that other cigar we were smoking. And, just as a note, this is true of wine. This is true of any leafy food that you would eat, or in our case, a leafy thing that you would light up and smoke. It's going to reflect the character and nature of the dirt in which it was grown, or in the case of tobacco, what may have been around it. If you're barbecuing pigs, you're going to detect some meat that may come through, some smoke meat that may come through there. That was one of the notes that I read, and I thought, how in the world would that even happen? And I think you have some of that profile that can leach into tobacco that doesn't. And so when we talk about the flavor profile of tobacco, you are tasting notes of where it was grown. That's why Cuban cigars, you say, well, it's the same seed grown in Cuba versus Honduras versus Nicaragua versus Dominican Republic. It may be, but they're grown in different climates. It's the same effect as where the barrel is in the rickhouse and the climate.
Yeah, and, in the wine world, they use or the high nose world, they call it terroir. And what's that's the word for it. It's hard for the southern tongue to say that word, but terroir.
I don't know what you just said.
Yeah, terroir. But anyway, it's just what you describe. It's the dirt you grow it in, and the atmosphere. In wines, it's with Napa Valley, it's above the fog line, so the wine, the vineyard gets more sun as opposed below the fog line. They don't get as much sun, so the grapes get more photosynthesis. The vines do, and converts more sugar. So, there's no doubt that the terroir affects the cigars and the wheat. I think, though, to take it to another step, do you have to grow it yourself? I think, Weller, back in the day, the original William LaRue, he was known to source some of his bourbons from other places around him.
Right.
Nowadays, we have Midwest Grain Products, MGP. So some people look down on that and saying, oh, man, you're not doing it yourself. You're not distilling it yourself. But to a certain degree, hey, maybe it's better just to source and taste barrels, and put it together yourself.
So let me ask you this, going back to our topic. You talked about your experience with football preparing you because you stuck with it.
Yep.
There was an element of resilience there. And I've heard children's counselors talk about the thing missing in kids today is that ability to fight through, the stick-to-itiveness, if you will. What advice would you give either a young person or somebody middle-aged who's struggling with that call and feeling like, man, they just can't figure it out? Whereas you, as a young person, you kind of knew.
Yeah, but I think you said this already, so I'm not saying anything we haven't talked about. Is no choice is the worst thing you can do. It's better for you to do something and figure out that's the wrong thing than not to choose anything at all. And be the best at whatever you're at. If you are, the dishwasher, man, those bottles are the cleanest bottles anybody's ever seen. You be the best bottle washer there ever was. Take pride in that. And also remember that there's enjoyment in that. Taking pride in your work. At the end of the day, that's kind of what life is. I mean, it doesn't make it, okay, you don't get a big paycheck. There's plenty of miserable people with big paychecks. It's not the paycheck that's going to make you happy. It's finding that fulfillment in your work, finding that calling in which you feel that God has purposed you, if you fulfill your purpose in life, that's going to give you more meaning than any paycheck, fame, power, pleasure. Those are the big things people go after: power, pleasure, money, the fame. Those are ephemeral. They're going to fade on you. They're not going to have substance to it. If you find meaning and taking pride in washing those dishes, and man, those dishes are clean, and you take pride in that work, that's going to give you more enjoyment and more fulfillment in life than anything else.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there's got to be purpose in the work that you do. You used the example before of a freshly mown lawn or freshly mowed lawn. I asked my wife, who's an English major, the correct grammar for that. No good answer. But she was like, I don't know. Good question.
We're in the South. We'll get away with saying anything we want.
Freshly mowed lawn, perhaps. But it's the fact that you can look back and go, that was a good day's work. There's value in that. You do have a sense of pride that you're able to have to move you to whatever the next thing may be, if there's a next thing. Whereas for me, the voices in my head that tell me I'm worthless if I do nothing, that voice gets louder. And it becomes paralyzing, and worse for men, isolating.
Yeah.
We as people are called to be in community. So we're talking about calling. I think we're made as humans communal beings. We need to be around other people to call out what needs to happen, and to remind us of who we are, apart from for me, the dark voices in my head that tell me whatever lie I want to believe about myself. Yeah. That's why I think sitting here with friends, but you and I have done this together, is a good reminder of those are lies.
Absolutely. I mean, the guy you just alluded to him. The guys sitting in this audience right here today,
and Janie,
right, have been that for us. Let's make note. Janie is better than I am, so let's take that off the table.
That goes without saying.
Yeah, that's that. Yeah, So, but I would not be where I am today without friends like you and friends in this audience. I mean, you don't get there alone. I mean, you got to have those friends who call you out and saying, Hubbard, you're an idiot, and don't do that. Or, hey, that a boy, way to go. I mean, you don't do this alone.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great way to end the episode. In this, another Two Guys on the Porch, and today we're not on the porch. We're with friends at the Mission Cigar and Social. We're happy to be here. We're happy to have others join us. We hope to do it again, maybe take it on the road to other locations, but always join us, Two Guys on a Porch.
What a momentous field trip. This is awesome. Thank you guys for being out here. I don't have to tell it to the audience because you guys were good enough to show up. But for everybody else listening and watching, be sure to like and subscribe because, man, this is a fun passion for us. And we want to continue to do it, but we can't do it without your help. So please be sure to like, subscribe, share. Come down to Mission Cigar and Social. Tell them that because of this podcast, you came here, and they'll probably charge you double for your cigar, but we will appreciate it.
Thank you all. Life is much better with friends, a drink, and cigar, and some Two Guys on a Porch swag.
Let us know what your drink and cigar of choice is at twoguysonaporch.com, and you'll be entered into a drawing to get some Two Guys on a Porch swag